Okay, good afternoon. Let's get started. We ended last class by, I hope, with, I hope, a convincing argument for why we should study advertising and why it's a powerful form of communication. We said the major argument was ads are everywhere, colonizing, invading more and more spaces, or commercial speech is everywhere, and as importantly, ads are not just like any other messages. In fact, the most amount of creativity and the most amount of money, the most amount of thought goes into making those ads. And so if we want to understand, I would say not just understand advertising, but if we want to understand our culture, then we had better come to terms. We have to figure out a way to understand this system, which seems to be almost invisible because there's so much of it. Okay, that's the challenge of the fish. And remember, we're the fish, and what we're trying to do is make the air that we breathe, the water that we swim in. We're trying to make it visible and trying to figure out exactly what impact it's having on us. Now, to do that, to understand. Sorry, if you could. The handout you'll need is the one I asked you to bring to class today. It's called the Diamond Life. If you could get that out, because I'll be using that during this class. Okay, to understand this hyper-commercialized world, and that's actually a good way of describing the culture. It's not just commercialized. In fact, it's hyper-commercialized and getting more and more hyper, by the minute. To understand this hyper-commercialized world, we have to make sure that we ask the right question about the power of advertising. Okay, the right question about the power of advertising, because in fact, if you ask the wrong question, you could spend a lifetime studying it, and you could come up with all kinds of answers. But if it's the wrong question, it may not give you any more insight into what we're interested in. And I think for too long, our culture, or in general, what we've done is we've asked the wrong question about advertising. And let me tell you what I think is the wrong question. For us, if you're interested in the social, the cultural, the political, the societal effect of this hyper-commercialized message system, if that's what your interest is, then the wrong question, there is a wrong question. This is mostly how advertising has been studied. And advertising has been studied, the question of the effect of advertising has been studied to death. There are huge amounts of effort to go into trying to figure out what the effects of advertising. And I just think, from our purposes, that most of those, the focus of that, well, they've asked the wrong question. And this is what I think is the wrong question, for our purposes. That is, does an advertising campaign increase sales of that particular product or brand? Now, if you come from the perspective, if you're Pepsi-Cola, or if you're Coca-Cola, or if you're, Anheuser-Busch, or if you're Levi's, or if you're Ford, that's the question you want to answer about your advertising. Is all the money that I'm spending on advertising, is it doing what it's supposed to do? Okay, so if you're an advertiser, that's an interesting question. If you're an advertiser, that's the right question. If you're not an advertiser, it is the wrong question. And for too long, we've essentially we've allowed the question of the power of advertising to be addressed upon whether it increases sales of a particular product. And there's a beer commercial. Does a beer commercial make us buy beer? If the answer is yes, it's powerful. If it's no, then it's not very powerful. Well, as I hope to demonstrate today, I don't think you ever need to buy a product to be affected by advertising. You never need to fork over your money. Some people need to do it at some point, but in terms of how advertising works, or the power of advertising in terms of its cultural impact, that's kind of an irrelevant question for our purposes. The right question. Don't get me wrong. This question is, if you're in the School of Marketing and the School of Business, this is the right question for you. Because you're not interested in the societal effects of advertising and that stuff. You're interested in whether advertising works. So it's not the wrong question all the time. The question of whether, the issue of whether the question is, the question is it relevant to what we're interested in? Is it relevant to what we're interested in? The relevant question, the right question, I would argue, has to take what I want to call a cultural perspective. And what I mean by cultural perspective is every society has a cultural space. Every society has a space where stories are told about the culture. Stories are told about what is good, what is bad, what is right, what is wrong, what is moral, what is immoral. That's what makes human beings unique, that we think through these, we think these things. We are a symbolic species that is always interpreting the world. That's what culture is. And every society, human society that has ever existed, has had a space where stories are told about what it means to be human. In this, what we've done in this space, in our culture, in this society, we've allowed that cultural space to be taken over. By very, very narrow interests. So the stories that we hear, and there's nothing natural about a story. There is nothing natural about understanding the world. The way in which we understand the world depends upon the stories that we are exposed to. That story, depending upon which family you're raised up in, depending upon what your religion is, depending upon which community you were in, depending upon the stories that come from your ethnicity, that will impact how you think about the world. That's culture. Now, I don't want to deny that family, community, religion are still important, but they're not as important as they used to be, because what has happened is that the influences of that are being pushed out. And into that space has come commercial speech, has come the discourse of advertising with its own set of stories. Now, yes, advertising is trying to sell us things, right? Without a doubt, every single ad is trying to get us to buy something. But for our purposes, I actually think that's an irrelevant question. The question I want to ask is, how does advertising influence how we think about ourselves? How does advertising how does it influence how we think about the world? How does it influence how we define goodness and badness? How does it define right and wrong? Because that's what every culture does. And that society every culture defines those things. And as our culture has become more and more, as I said, hyper-commercialized, as it has become more and more the spaces of the culture are increasingly taken over by commercial interests, corporate interests, with their own set of stories that they bring into that. How do those stories impact how we think about ourselves? That is, the question I want to ask is, how does advertising influence our values and our identities? That's a very different question than, does advertising increase sales? Right? We're not in the world of marketing. We're now, as I said, what we're doing is taking a cultural, sociological, anthropological approach to the study of advertising. The question I want to ask for the semester is, what does advertising do to how we think about ourselves? And that's a question that's not often asked. It's a question about morality, question about values, question about identity. The broader questions about, those are the deeper questions that every human being has to go through. Every human being has to come up with an answer to that. What do I believe in? How do I fit into the world? How does the world work? What is right? What is wrong? What should I do? What is moral? What is immoral? And I want to look at the role that advertising plays in answering those questions. Because what advertising does, advertising is not just about products. Of course it's about products, right? Yes, on the one hand. But that doesn't tell us anything. What advertising talks to us about subjects that are important, but it does it through the medium of things. As it is selling us beer and pimple cream and snack bars and whatever else, and makeup, and as it's selling us those things, it is also talking to us about things that are important in our lives. is doing it through the medium of things. And the phrase I want to use, it's a very deliberate phrase, to get to this, to get to both sides of this. Yes, it's about selling, but it's also about something broader. The phrase I want to use is that advertising is a discourse. A discourse is a story. Advertising is a discourse through and about objects. It's a discourse through and about objects. I understand. That may be confusing to you right now. What I want to do right now is actually go through and give you an example of what I mean. And it's just one example. By itself, it doesn't prove very much, but it will give us a way to think about this broader role that advertising plays in how we construct our identities and how we construct our values. What is forever? Of course, everyone knows that. Well, I wouldn't say everyone. If you live in this culture and you've been exposed to that story, you know a diamond is forever. Okay, this is an idea that is now central to the ways in which we think about our intimate relationships. It's central to the way we think about intimacy, to courtship, to marriage. This is not some minor idea. That the gift of diamonds, especially from men to women, is part of the rituals of courtship and marriage in this culture. It's a very, very important idea, and as you came up with it so quickly, a very, very deep idea. Now the question I want to ask is, where did this idea come from? Because it came from somewhere. That's the thing about ideas, they always come from somewhere. They never just fall fully formed from heaven. Right? Ideas are creations of human beings. And so you can always ask that question, if you think this, why do you think it? If you think this, why do you think it? Well, it's not often we can actually trace through where it comes from, but in this case we actually can. What we do to understand it, to figure out how a diamond came to mean forever, we have to look at the history of diamonds. Because it is, in fact, it's a product that has a history. And diamonds didn't always mean forever. Diamonds didn't always mean forever. In fact, until about the 1870s, diamonds were a genuinely rare stone. And its value, the value of diamonds in the 19th century until about 1870, came from their scarcity. They were like gold, or they were like other gems. There weren't very many of them, and if people wanted them, then the more you could get of them, the more money you would make. Well, in about 1870, huge diamond mines are discovered in South Africa. You could dig diamonds out of the ground, you could by the handful. In fact, I would say one of the most important things you need to know about diamonds, and this is the myth of diamonds. The most important thing you need to know about diamonds is they are not scarce. They are not a scarce stone. They are found almost everywhere in the world. Their value does not come from their scarcity. Now, the owners of these mines in South Africa, and there were a number of these mines, they were fearful that, they were producing diamonds, and suddenly there's all these, you got a flood of diamonds onto the market. And if that was the case, then as supply increases for the same amount of demand, the price for diamonds will come down. So fearful that the price of diamonds would come down, they formed themselves into a monopoly, into a cartel. And this cartel, they called, is after one of the farmers. It wasn't a main farm, one of the farmers' fields and mines in which it was discovered, the diamonds were discovered, is De Beers. And De Beers, I'm sure, is a familiar name to you now. They are now associated intimately, of course, with diamonds. The family that controls, again, I'm actually going to go through, we're going to do diamonds today, you've also got a film to watch on this. The second required film is a film called The Diamond Empire. And actually it's a very good film. I'm going to show you clips of it today, but about the history of diamonds. And you'll learn from that in fact the family that has really controlled the supply of diamonds for the last century and more is a South African family called the Oppenheimers. They're the power behind De Beers. And their goal, the goal of the Oppenheimers, the goal of De Beers, was to get control of the global trade in diamonds. In this sense, perhaps De Beers and the Oppenheimers, they are the architects perhaps of the most successful financial empire there has been, and certainly the one that has lasted the longest, and certainly the one that has its tentacles all over the globe. So, they try and restrict the flow of diamonds onto the market. That's what, when you have a monopoly, right? Instead of, the reason you have a monopoly is if you have competition, then, well, every person in that who's competing will act on their own interest. And in their interest, you will try and get as much, if you have 10 different mine owners and there's lots of diamonds, you'll try and get out as many diamonds as you can onto the world market before your competitor does. But you know that if that happens, then the price of diamonds is going to come down. So one of the things you can do is, in fact, get rid of the competition. You can say, actually, it's better for us to collaborate together. It's better for us to form ourselves into a monopoly to make sure there is no competition. Competition is bad for consumers. Competition is good for consumers. Competition is bad for producers. It's bad for manufacturers. Manufacturers hate competition. There's all this nonsense talked about how capitalism is about competition, and the more competition, the better. No, every single company wants monopoly. Monopoly, in fact, is the natural state of capitalism, not competition. And every company is trying towards it. Not every company has been able to do what De Beers has been able to do, which actually is to carve out this monopoly. So they started to control the supply of diamonds. However, by about 1938, there is a real crisis in the diamond business. The sales of diamonds are declining, both in the amount of diamonds that are being sold and also in the carats, in the value of the diamonds as well. What De Beers needed to do, again, at this time, if I had said, something is forever, no one, not one person in the culture would have said diamonds. Not one person in the culture would have said diamonds. What De Beers needed to do, faced with this declining market, De Beers needed to change, because as I said, they're not scarce. Diamonds are not scarce. You can actually get them most places, and as you'll see, one of the things that De Beers used to do, that still does, I mean, if your control is dependent, if your profits are dependent upon making sure that you have total control of the product, then every time a new diamond mine is discovered somewhere, De Beers, in fact, has to go there and either buy it up or destroy it in some way. You have to make sure every time there's something new that's discovered, that it becomes that you have control of it, and so you have to make arrangements to get it. Diamond mines are now, you can get them in all over Africa, and sometimes they're not even mines. Many diamonds actually can be discovered on riverbeds. You can walk down the beach on some beaches and actually get diamonds. That's how common they are. So in Africa, more and more around the world, in Australia, in Russia, everywhere where essentially diamonds are global products and can be found anywhere. And what De Beers had to do essentially was to make sure that wherever diamonds were found, that mine or that place became part of the monopoly, or at least the supply of diamonds from that place became under their control. So they could then give little bits of diamonds, small amounts of diamonds out to try and keep the price high. From an economic point of view, it's exactly what producers should do. It's exactly what producers should do. However, by about 1938, there is a real crisis in the diamond business. Sales are declining. And what De Beers has to do, knowing that one way, if sales are declining, one thing you can do is, well, perhaps we'll produce more. But the more they produce, the more the sales will, the more the money will go down, because you're taking the value of your product and making it and not making it based on its scarcity. So they can't just produce more. The more they produce, the lower the price will go, because remember, it's not scarce. Remember, it's not a scarce product. So what they needed to do was they needed to change public attitudes towards diamonds. They had to make diamonds worth something beyond their economic value, beyond the fact of their scarcity. They had to make them mean something symbolic. They had to make them mean something, not just so people wouldn't just buy diamonds for investment. They had to make diamonds mean something in the emotional life of people. In the emotional life of people. I'm going to play you a clip. This is the film you're going to be watching, The Diamond Empire. I'm going to play you a number of clips from it, but as I said, you have to watch the entire thing as well. This is the intro to The Diamond Empire.
In the spring of 1992, more than 100 wealthy benefactors from around the world were invited to the Hotel Pierre in New York City to a fundraiser for AIDS research. Elizabeth Taylor, the high priestess of the mystique of diamonds, had invited them personally to an auction of fine jewelry that raised more than $500,000. The evening itself was a glittering tribute to the allure of diamonds.
I'm wearing the diamonds because my sweetheart has given them to me, and it means love, and it means forever.
Diamonds? Aren't they a girl's best friend? Did something change?
Diamonds. Diamonds. They're a woman's best friend.
Champagne.
But what we think about diamonds is in fact a myth. At the center of that myth is an illusion that diamonds are valuable because they are rare. When writer Edward Epstein set out to investigate the diamond trade, he discovered that diamonds aren't rare at all.
Well, what I learned was that the diamond business wasn't a business of extracting, as I originally expected, something of enormous value, and then simply seeing how much of this object you could get out of the ground and selling it. That was what the business appeared to be when I started my venture. That their real business was restricting what came out of the ground, restricting what was discovered, restricting what got cut, restricting what actually found its way into the retail market, and at the same time, through movies, through advertising, through Hollywood, through the manipulation of perceptions, creating the idea that there was this enormous demand for these shiny little objects that they seemed to have an abundant supply. So I wound up on this voyage of discovery, starting off with the idea that there was this object of great value, and that it was just a question of how many could you get out. And I wound up discovering it was just the opposite.
This is the story of how that grand illusion was created, and the story of how one family gained control of the world's diamond trade, and for nearly a century has maintained its hold on an empire that defines the very idea of what diamonds really are.
To this end, De Beers in 1938 hired the New York advertising agency of N.W. Ayers to change public attitudes. Okay, this was what was necessary. This is quote 1 from the handout today. Okay, Edward Epstein says that by the end of the 1930s, this is what De Beers had to do. He says, quote 1, what was necessary was the creation of a mass mentality in which women would perceive diamonds not as precious stones that could be bought and sold according to economic conditions or fashion, but as an inseparable part of courtship and married life. As an inseparable part of courtship and married life. And you'll see what they did was, the targets, we'll see actually there were 2 targets, but the main targets were women. Now they were not, this is an interesting campaign, women were not the buyers, but they were the targets of the campaign. As I said, to this end, De Beers hired the New York advertising agency of N.W. Ayers, and with the goal of changing public attitudes. And it had 2 goals. Okay, there were two goals for the campaign. For men, they wanted to persuade men to buy bigger diamonds. Men were 90% of the buyers of diamonds. They wanted to persuade men that the diamonds were a gift of love, and the bigger the diamond, the greater the love. Because men actually weren't, they were buying the smaller, lower quality diamonds, and they wanted men to actually buy the higher quality, more expensive diamonds. And the way that the more you did it, the more you spent, the more it was an indication of your love, an expression of your love. For women, that to persuade women that diamonds were a necessity to romantic courtship. Okay, that diamonds and exchange diamonds upon engagement, in fact, was a necessary, not, oh, it'd be nice if you got a diamond, no, a necessary component, a necessary part of how engagement and courtship and marriage was thought of. So it's a very specific, De Beers, the value of what they own, they can dig it out by the ground by the ton, is going down, so they can't just dig out more. What they have to do is they have to get people to think that it's worth more than it actually is by changing the symbolic value around diamonds. And the way they were going to do it was, in fact, to change public attitudes. Now, the reason De Beers actually could do it, okay, Coke, for example, couldn't do something like this because when they try and change attitudes towards Coca-Cola, there's also Pepsi-Cola. So when there is competition, you can't change that the way you think about a product. But when you have control of it, when you have monopoly control of it, you can actually think about changing the very meaning of the product itself. And you don't really have to mention, very rarely have to mention, the company. You don't even have to do what every company has to do now, which is brand. Because if you control that product, then the only place people are going to get it from is you. And branding is not valuable to you. What you have to do is you have to change the meaning. You have to change the meaning of diamonds. And you have to get people to believe that these things that you can dig out of the ground by the ton, essentially worthless, that they are valuable for some reason. And in fact, what you should fork down, 2 months' salary for it. That's what the goal of the campaign was. How do they do this? How do you change the meaning of diamonds? As I say, it's a long campaign. It's a long campaign. Firstly, you did it through the medium of movies, and you also did it through the British royalty. When again, this campaign starts in the late 1930s, 1938, 39. The war interrupts it a little bit, but then after the war, it carries on at full scale. And the major medium in the culture of this time is the movies. The 1950s and 1960s are the heyday of the movies. And so you exploit the movies and royalty. Let's go to quote number 2. This is from an NWA's memorandum. This is from an internal memorandum from the advertising agency, and they say, quote 2, motion pictures seldom include scenes showing the selection of or purchase of an engagement ring to a girl. It will be our plan to contact scenario writers and directors and arrange for such scenes in suitable productions. I.e. bribery. We'll pay you, and you write scenes in movies in which diamonds are key. I love the phrasing, right? It will be our plan to contact scenario writers and directors and arrange for such scenes in suitable productions. It doesn't seem quite the same thing when you say we'll just bribe them and pay them huge amounts of money to change the movies that are being made. So this is, the next clip is another clip from the Diamond Empire, talking about how the movies, and especially royalty, were used in changing the way the culture thought about diamonds.
I was born 3 billion years ago of fire and light.
Cornering the world's supply of diamonds was a stunning achievement. No less extraordinary was the cartel's success in creating a demand for its huge stockpile of diamonds.
Who am I? The eternal gift of love between man and woman. I am a diamond. I am forever.
The De Beers campaign is probably one of the most successful campaigns. I mean, measured in terms of the growth in the market. In the 1930s, they were selling a rather insignificant amount of diamonds in America. By the early 80s, they were selling close to $2 billion worth.
De Beers first targeted American consumers through the movies.
And they opened a Hollywood office. And in the Hollywood office, they would give out diamonds to producers in return for them putting the diamonds in the film in a way that was considered very favorable. Now, what was considered favorable was very simple. Surprise. If a woman was brought in on the decision, she might have a lot of ideas of what she wanted. So what they wanted to do is create the idea that the man had to surprise the woman and present her with a diamond.
And now for the important question I wanted to ask you.
Well, it's about time. I'm dying of curiosity.
You know I'm madly in love with you. I want you to marry me, Lily. You're in love with me, too, aren't you?
Well, if I'm not, then I'm afraid I don't know what love is.
Here's your engagement present, darling.
Oh, Jeffrey, it's beautiful.
Well, that's Milo.
Milo?
Yes, he's wondering what's taking us so long.
Wouldn't he be surprised if he knew?
I doubt if he'd be surprised at anything.
Not only are we talking about what is a familiar process today of planting products in films, where we've all heard of the product endorsements and that sort of thing, but we're talking about Hollywood in its golden age, where entire movies were created. They identified the biggest stars, actresses of that period, and they never appeared in public without their De Beers diamonds.
Claudette Colbert and Merle Oberon were given special scenes to show off their De Beers diamonds. Diamonds Are Dangerous was conveniently retitled Adventure in Diamonds. But De Beers aimed even higher than Hollywood.
The British royal family was another idea of what, in the American mind, represented the ultimate in how you should behave and how you should behave aristocratically and well. And of course, the British royal family was more than willing to go along because diamonds came from British colonies.
From this, the largest man-made hole in the world, over 100 million pounds worth of diamonds have been recovered. In the De Beers sorting room, 3 million pounds worth of rough diamonds were on view.
The royal family was lobbied heavily and successfully so that the English royalty, Queen Elizabeth, started wearing diamonds, and she basically left all of her other gems off. That's a tremendous coup for a public relations agent, to get the royal family to essentially become sales agents.
Caskets made of Kimberley blue ground, embossed with coronets, contained a 6-carat stone for Princess Elizabeth and a 4.5-carat diamond for Princess Margaret.
You must travel back in time 1 billion years to witness its birth.
De Beers advertising set its diamonds in worlds of glamour and royalty. But its best-known slogan arose out of the fear that sales would be undercut if people began putting second-hand jewelry on the market.
It is rare.
So they had to create the idea that you should never sell a diamond, even though its value would only increase. And secondly, that people should store and hoard these diamonds. So the whole idea that a diamond is forever is really their desperate hope that people will hold diamonds forever.
It is love, and its only promise is forever.
It's stunning. I mean, what's going on in the culture? The movies, as he says, the golden age of movies. And then you have the British royal family essentially acting as sales agents. And everything, and all the ideas about royalty that they encapsulate gets translated onto diamonds. Okay, so through the movies, you also did it through, there was an advertising PR campaign, also did it through news stories linking diamonds and love. As again, the film indicates, diamonds were given away to stars to wear as part of whenever they were seen in public. In fact, a few years ago, entire marriages were defined by how many diamonds were being given. Elizabeth Taylor is especially associated with diamonds because she was married to an actor called Richard Burton, and she was married to him like 4 or 5 times. They got married, got divorced, and got married again. Every time they got married, there would be a gift of a bigger diamond. That seemed to symbolize what their relationship was about. And they also did it, of course, through a regular advertising campaign. In fact, although I want to focus in on the long-term overall effects surrounding advertising, on the short term, actually, it was very successful. By 1941, sales of diamonds in the U.S. had risen 55%. So in 3 years, sales of diamonds had risen by almost 50%. Even in the short term, in fact, it is a spectacular success. In 1947, after the war, and you'll see in the film, there is the role of De Beers during the war is a very contentious issue. In terms of, because diamonds, remember, diamonds are, there are diamonds that are commercial diamonds for that people give as gifts. But diamond also has some properties. It's one of the hardest stones you can ever find, and so it has uses in industrial technology as well, when products are being made. And in fact, during the Second World War, one of the major battles actually that took place was who was going to have more diamonds, whether it was going to be Britain and the U.S. or Nazi Germany, because the more diamonds you had, the more weapons you could produce. And in fact, it was a time when it became clear, it was unclear where De Beers' loyalties lay in that, and who they were going to provide diamonds to. Again, the film goes more into that. However, by the end of the war, by 1947, a fresh strategy is devised. In that they now wanted to make, even the early strategy was to make diamonds still something that is sold to elites, something that is sold to upper class people. But in 1947, they decided to make it a mass consumer item. No longer just the elite, but in fact, it was designed for ordinary people. And this was a unique campaign. The effects of it were not going to be short term. The effects of it were going to be long-term, to change cultural attitudes towards diamonds. The new strategy included lectures to high school students, and it focused on the continued use of celebrities. In 1948, some copywriter at NW Ayers came up with the slogan, "A diamond is forever." So if you don't know where that idea came from, Diamond is Forever, 1948, somewhere on Madison Avenue in the offices of NW Ayers. And since that time, it quickly became the company motto for De Beers. By the end of the 1950s, so after about 20 years of the campaign, NW Ayers was able to report to De Beers, and I don't think they're just being, trying to overplay what they did themselves, but this is an NW Ayers memorandum, and I think it's actually true. They said, "Since 1939, an entirely new generation of young people has grown to marriageable age. To this new generation, a diamond ring is considered a necessity for engagement to virtually everyone." And I think that's true. That is, in 20 years, they were able to change, cultural attitudes towards engagement, towards love, towards intimacy, towards marriage, and make diamonds central to that. It is a stunning achievement. Stunning achievement. How was this done? Okay, how was this done? Well, if you want to understand, instead of, perhaps you may be skeptical about listening to me about how deliberate this is. Well, all you have to do is listen to De Beers themselves. Because you can, again, if you ask the people at De Beers, they will say, of course it's not a valuable stone based on its scarcity. Of course it's not. We have billions of dollars worth of stones stored away. Our job is to restrict. Our job is to restrict the flow of diamonds onto the world market. That is our job. And to make it appear that the ones that we do let out there, as though they have some greater value beyond their scarcity, which they don't have. That is our job. I'm going to play you now a clip from, this is De Beers. Okay, the ads are one thing. I'll show you, we'll look at some ads. The ads, the ads are designed for you and me. The ads are designed for consumers. But they also speak to their dealers. They speak to people whose job it is to sell these diamonds. And this is a De Beers promotional tape to dealers. And I want you to listen. This is De Beers speaking now to the people, to its dealers who are going to be selling diamonds. I want you to listen to the language carefully because it is their language.
Let's start with your bread and butter, the support behind the rites of passage, the diamond engagement ring, diamond anniversary band, and the 25th anniversary diamond. Our goal is to make diamonds a cultural imperative for all these important occasions in a woman's life. That's why we are continuing to support these segments, so that newer products like the diamond anniversary band and the 25th anniversary diamond will become as obligatory as the diamond engagement ring, bringing your customers back again and again. That's what we're here for, to respond to your requests and to help you sell more diamonds.
Our job, they say, is this is their terms, going to make it a cultural imperative. The way we have done to engagement rings, we're going to make it for anniversary bands. We're going to make it a cultural imperative, an obligation, a necessity. When they're boasting, they say, look, we've already done it with engagement, now we're going to do it to something else. Just in case you didn't get it the first time.
Our goal is to make diamonds a cultural imperative for all these important occasions in a woman's life. That's why we are continuing to support these segments, so that newer products like the diamond anniversary band and the 25th anniversary diamond will become as obligatory as the diamond engagement ring, bringing your customers back again and again.
A cultural imperative. That is what they've done. They've now got their sights set beyond engagement. Why limit it to one little relationship? Can we now extend our relation to other things? How is this done? Let's look at the strategy. The first strategy, of course, is this is the main one. It's to link diamonds with engagement and love. Okay, you've seen them. These are TV ads. We'll look at some.
Celebrations in all of love's languages. Only a diamond says forever. Travel back in time 1 billion years to witness its birth. You will search in vain for a more enduring or brilliant creation. You can comb the world and never find one the same. It is rare. It is precious. It is love. And its only promise is forever.
And there's thousands of those ads. I mean, you flood the cultural space that people occupy. You flood the cultural space within people, where people think, with these ideas, with these stories, with this discourse. And of course, people will take it on, because people, in fact, take on. I mean, people are. What do we believe? We believe the stories we are surrounded by. And if you can be one of those stories, then you can change anything. You can change how people think about almost anything. In addition to TV ads, of course, there are, I'm just going to go through these quickly. There are lots of magazine ads. You don't actually need to read it, you just look at the images. Images of love, of intimacy. That's the moment. That's actually what they want. What's the target for women? They want women to live for that moment when someone will get down on their knees and propose to you and in their hands will be the engagement ring. That is I mean, I'll just call it the myth, but if you have enough power, cultural power, you can make it true. But that is the goal of the bee, is to make women believe that moment when someone asks you to marry them is incomplete without a diamond. It's incomplete without a diamond. And the more you can do that, then men will get the message. You don't actually have to advertise to men. Men actually respond to the pressures that come from. So it's a very interesting campaign. The campaign is directed at women largely, and the buyers are men. Again, lots of. I mean, I'm just going to. Also, this idea that they're old, that they're connected with all kinds of. Connected with beauty, and in this sense, there's some traditional notions of beauty with diamonds as old that are presented here. I'm just going to go through these very quickly. That means they're designed to work as you flip the page. They're designed to work in that instant way. Okay, this was an ad found in Sports Illustrated. So this is actually directed at men. Okay, you've decided to buy a diamond ring. You know, training camp begins now. So this is for men. Okay, you know you've got to buy a diamond. So what do you have? How do you go about buying it? So they give them training hints. And of course, one of them is this idea. It's ridiculous. This idea that you should spend 2 months' salary. Again, it's brilliant at the same time. It's ridiculous and brilliant at the same time. Because you can't just say the more you spend. If you want it as a mass consumer item, you can't just say the more you spend, the more you love someone. Because that means the people who aren't very rich won't be able to spend very much, and they think, oh, I can't spend $10,000, therefore I'm not going to spend anything. Why should I spend something that's going to be, that's not going to be worth very much? So you have to have a relative measure. You have to make it relative, not absolute. And so, how much is your love worth? But it's worth two months of your salary. What is that? Well, it depends what you earn. As I said, it's absolutely brilliant. I mean, if you did it in terms of the average wage, you're talking about $4,000 is what they want you to spend on these worthless stones that they have billions of, that they control the supply of, that they control the meaning of. They want you to fork over 2 months' hard salary.
When you get engaged, you want to find the right words.
What do you say we go off when we get married? We could go to Niagara Falls.
You also want to find the right diamond.
I think we'd make a successful merger.
Well, let's go off to the ranch and get hitched.
But how much do you spend on a diamond for the woman you love?
Forget it.
A good guideline is 2 months' salary.
Will you marry me?
Yes.
Yes?
Ask the Jewelers of America about the 2 month salary guideline. A diamond is forever.
You always liked the falls, didn't you?
The second strategy. Okay, why limit it to engagement? As we saw in that clip about the cultural imperative, we've made engagement a cultural imperative. Now we're going to make the stages of people's relationship a cultural imperative as well. So there's now first the 10-year anniversary gift.
Oh, 5 more minutes. It's our anniversary. Let's call in sick.
Can't.
Oh, 10 years deserves something.
True.
Haven't I made you coffee for 10 years?
Haven't I had to drink it? Now, come on.
Why?
Show your friend this. Happy anniversary.
Oh, it's beautiful.
The Diamond Anniversary Band. This year. Tell her you'd marry her all over again.
Okay, I'll show him. Tomorrow.
10 years. His hair is a little thinner.
I don't remember her looking so beautiful.
Not bad. Our next chalk.
Hello, stranger.
I'm hardly a stranger.
Well, you are late.
I know. You shouldn't have waited 10 years for this. Happy anniversary. The Diamond Anniversary Band. Tell her you'd marry her all over again.
You sure can pick an appetizer.
Why stop at 10 years? Expand to the 25th year anniversary. This is the, I mean, this is the, when you're in the business of selling diamonds and you have to expand your sales every year, you can't just say, well, we've got romance locked up. We're just going to stop there. Why stop there when in fact you can expand into more and more spaces? So this is the 25th anniversary.
25 years together. They've just flown by. 25 years of kids, jobs, moving. I didn't just want to bring her back to her favorite place. I wanted to give her something she's only dreamt of.
The 25th anniversary diamond necklace.
Wow, you looked scarier 25 years ago.
Did I?
You looked scared.
I don't know. I thought I hit it well for an innocent girl.
You were innocent for the 60s.
Any regrets?
None. You?
Just one.
What?
That I waited 25 years to give you
the 25th anniversary diamond, a brilliant celebration of the loving marriage.
I've got goosebumps.
Well, you've given me goosebumps for 25 years.
Okay, so you've got engagement figured out, you've got the 10-year anniversary figured out, you've got the 20, if it lasts long, that long, you've got the 25 years. But it's still really only men who are doing the buying. How can we get women into this market? Because, I mean, think about if you could do that, if you could get women now to buy diamonds. So they did, I don't think this lasted very long actually, but they did try it. They expanded it to men as recipients of diamonds. Now the beers have to be very careful, right? You have to be very careful because the more things you apply it to, the weaker it becomes. So you can't just apply it to everything because if it becomes everything, then it becomes nothing. So you've got to have this very careful balance about, okay, how much can we expand without actually losing the value that we put into it. So you can't just put it to everything. So they tried this. So there were these ads, the man's diamond. And then the latest strategy, of course, is to expand for women as buyers of diamonds for themselves. Why wait for, especially as the age of marriage, gets older and older for a large segment of the population? Why limit yourself to that? Why not buy diamonds for yourself? And this is the right hand strategy. Your left hand says we, your right hand says me. Your left hand loves candlelight. Your right hand loves the spotlight. Your left hand rocks the cradle. Your right hand rules the world. Women of the world, raise your right hand. So now you can buy a diamond for yourself. Now this is a very tricky thing because the way you have to sell it is you can't say to women, look, you're never going to get a diamond, you're a loser, so you should buy one for yourself. So you have to sell it that you're independent. The reason you don't have a diamond is because you're independent. And you love people, but you're not just ready for that, so therefore you don't need to wait until some man asks you because you're independent of men. But it doesn't mean you can't get the gift of diamonds from yourself. And it's actually been a pretty successful, this last one has been a pretty successful campaign. What is the results of this? The results of the marketing campaign? It's pretty spectacular. Pretty spectacular by any stretch of the imagination. Global annual sales, when the campaign started, it was around 23 million, 1939. The last figure I could come up with, industry analyst trying to figure this out, because again, there's no precise figures around this because it is now global, not just in the United States. By 2001, that figure was $50 billion. It's brilliant. $50 billion to buy something that you have an endless supply of. Endless supply of. And all you've got to do is just keep up the illusion that somehow these things are connected to intimacy and to marriage. That's the material effect. Culturally, the overall impact has been to create on the culture where diamonds are now central to thinking about the rituals of a romantic courtship, whether it be engagement, whether it be anniversaries, etc. That is, as I said, that's a pretty Stunning achievement. Yeah.
Is that 23 million with inflation?
No, it would have been 23. The question is about 23 million with inflation. I think it was 23 million at that time. So even with inflation built in, it's nowhere close to close to that. Diamonds are now part of the culture, right? Diamonds, they appear in other things. I mean, here is a Victoria's Secret ad that has diamonds. With a diamond bra. Or it can be, this is a Levi's. Right? Buttons are forever. I mean, that when you've infiltrated deep into the culture when other advertisers start to use it. Because when other advertisers start to use those ideas, you know then that those ideas have become normal. Those ideas have become normal. In addition, entire societies and cultural traditions have been affected. For example, in Japan, in the 1960s, there was actually almost no tradition of engagement rings. The last figure I have, this is from Edward Epstein in the book, or the person you saw there. He said by 1981, after extensive advertising campaigns, 60% of Japanese brides wore diamonds. So in the space of 20 years, a culture that didn't have any tradition to do with diamond engagement rings now has a large percentage of, a very different culture, now has a large percentage of people buying diamonds. Now, there is a problem, when, as I said, this is, so you don't really need it. You can look at it afterwards, okay? By the start of the part of the problem is when there's so many diamonds around, you're going to eventually not be able to control it. When there's so much of it, when you can literally just buy, if you find the right alluvial field on some beach in Africa, and you can just pick them up off the ground, at some point you're not going to be able to control the supply forever. And as I said, De Beers has done a really good job of controlling the supply of diamonds, but you're not going to be able to control it forever. And in fact, by the start of the 21st century, because other people want their share, when the government of Australia discovers diamond mines, what role, you have to reach agreement with the government of Australia about how they're going to treat this natural resource. And so at some point, the control is over in its total way. It's not over in terms of distribution. But by the start of the 21st century, the total control of the De Beers cartel was over. There's too many sources of diamonds that are in the world. De Beers is prepared for this day. De Beers has about $4 billion. This actually is an old figure. I don't know. De Beers has about $4 billion worth of diamonds stored away. Actually, one way they can actually stop someone, one way they can actually control the market is, let's say, the government of, well, you'll see in the film, Zaire is a major place where diamonds are found, and De Beers reached agreement with the dictator of Zaire of the Congo, Mobutu, to make sure that diamonds remained within the De Beers cartel. But Mobutu was a kind of greedy guy. I mean, that's what dictators, tend to be pretty greedy and ruthless. And so he said, well, why do I need De Beers? I'm just going to start selling diamonds to dealers in Europe on my own, so I don't have to go through the De Beers cartel. We tried that for a very short period of time, because what De Beers did was they said, you want to try this? Okay, what they did was they said, okay, these are the kind of diamonds you produce, and they took their store of diamonds and they flooded the market with those diamonds. So the value of Zaire's diamonds went way down, because in fact they were able to use all this incredible supply that they had to make sure that they weren't worth anything. And Mobutu, I mean, he's a brutal, murderous dictator. But he came crawling back to De Beers at that point, saying, "Okay, sorry, I don't really mean it. Let me back into the cartel." Now, De Beers has also started to lose control of the story of diamonds, because in fact, in recent years, there have been actually more and more consumers are now exposed to other information about the diamond business. And this has to do with the fact that there is more and more concern now, more and more focus on where diamonds come from. Actually, for me, it's always been an issue. Once you discover this, that is, if diamonds are connected to a white South African family, And South Africa, during the period of that growth, South Africa was a brutal, racist, apartheid society. Then, in fact, what diamonds always mean to me is apartheid. What diamonds always mean to me is slave labor. What diamonds always mean to me is the rape of Africa by white people. Because that's actually what the reality of South African diamonds was, until I mean, actually still is. That's where diamonds come from. They're produced in horrible places. The mining conditions are incredibly ruthless. The ways in which miners are treated, I mean, it has been over the years. It's just been incredibly nasty. Miners have been separated from their families for long periods of time because they didn't want you to leave the camp because you might take diamonds with you, and so they essentially locked down the camp and everything. You lived in that camp. So for a long time for me, and then it was diamonds didn't mean forever. Diamonds meant racism of the worst kind, institutionalized racism as represented by the white South African government during its, and it was in power for a long time. This is the government that Nelson Mandela fought against. This is the government that put Nelson Mandela in prison for 26 years. That is, and when part of where their power came from, part of where the power of the apartheid regime came from, was in fact from the control of diamonds. Because in fact it was incredibly profitable, and that was the Oppenheimers invested that money in other parts of the South African industry, other parts of the South African society. So in one sense, you could say that apartheid, in fact, was driven by these diamonds. And that is the meaning. For me, once you know about it, that's the meaning of diamonds. So when I see a diamond is forever, it doesn't mean anything to me. So I know, actually, I have another story about diamonds. And in fact, in recent years, more and more of that story has become visible, and it's focused around a particular thing called conflict diamonds. That is, diamonds come out of are part of civil wars that are going on around Africa. That is, what De Beers has done is made diamonds valuable. So whoever controls diamonds, in fact, can profit from that. And therefore, there is incredible incentive to control diamonds. And if there's a civil war going on and you need weapons, you need money to buy weapons, or one of the ways you get money to buy weapons is by controlling diamonds. And so there are civil wars, and especially in Sierra Leone, have been connected directly to the control of the diamond trade. I'm not going to play it because I don't have time, but you may remember a couple of years ago, Kanye West actually did a video on this called Diamonds Are Forever. That actually was based around I think this is the start of that. I'm not going to play the whole thing.
We now walking at the Diamond Rivers. Day past sunrise to sunset, under the eye them with the soldiers. Every day we not fearful with eyes. Indeed, some of we not enslaved by the rebels and forced to kill our own bamboo them. We know that the killer is blood diamond. The blood diamond.
Diamonds are forever. They won't leave in the night. I've no fear that they might hurt me. Diamonds are forever.
Throw your diamonds in the sky if you feel the vibe.
Diamonds are forever.
The rock is still alive every time I rhyme. Forever, ever, forever, ever, 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 ever. Close your eyes and imagine, feel the magic. Vegas on acid, seen through Yves Saint Laurent glasses, and I realized that I've arrived, cause it took more than a magazine to kill my vibe. Does he write his own rhymes? Sort proud of. I thank him, that mean I forgot better than you ever thought of. Damn, is she really that caught up? I ask, if you talking about classes, do my name get brought up? I remember I couldn't afford a Ford Escort or even a 4-track Recorder. So it's only right that I let the top drop on a drop-top Porsche. For yourself, that's important. If your stripper named Portia and you get tips from any man, then your fat friend, her nickname is Minivan. Excuse me, that's just a Henny, man. I drink, I'm supposed to stop, I can't because throw your diamonds in the sky if you feel the vibe. The rock is still alive every time I rhyme. Forever, ever, forever, ever, 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 ever. I was sick about awards, couldn't nobody cure me. Only player that got robbed and kept all his jewelry. Alicia Keys tried to talk some sense in them. 30 minutes later, seen there's no convincing them. What more could you ask for? The international, national. Who complain about when he is old and throw a tantrum like he is 3 years old? You gotta love it though, somebody still speak from his soul. And wasn't changed by the change or the game or the fame. When he came in the game, he made his own lane. Now all I need is y'all to pronounce my name. It's Kanye, but some of my plastics still say Kane. Got family in the D, kinfolk from Motown. Back in the shy, them ain't from Motown. Life moving too fast, I need to slow down. Girl, ain't give me no need to go. My father Ben said I need Jesus, so he took me to church and let the water wash over my freezer. The preacher said we need leaders. Right then, my body got sealed like a paraplegic. You know who you call, you got a message to leave it. The rock stand taller, you would never believe it. Take your diamonds and throw them up like you believe it. Yeah, the beat cold, but the flow is anemic. After debris settles and the dust gets swept off, Big K pick up where Young Hope left off. Right when magazines wrote Kanye West off, I drop my hits sound like the best of. A&R's looking like we messed up. Grammy night, damn right, we got dressed up. Bottle after bottle till we got messed up in the studio, but really though, yeah, he next up. People asking me is I'm gonna get my chain back. That'll be the same day I get the game back. You know the next question's all, yo, where Dame at? Let's track the Indian dance to bring our rain back. What's up with you and Jay, man? Are y'all okay, man? They pray for the death of our dynasty like amen. But right here stands amen with the power to make a diamond with his bare hands. Throw your diamonds in the sky if you feel the vibe. The rock is still alive every time I rhyme. Forever, ever, forever, ever, ever, ever,
Actually, it's interesting. I mean, the initial song that Kanye West did actually had very little to do with diamonds. And the video actually was more to do with where diamonds came from. And then actually, I think he recut the song, so he actually dealt more with the diamond trade. But initially, there actually wasn't much link between the visuals and the what the lyrics were about. I'm also going to play you another video now. I warn you, it's actually got some very horrific scenes in it, but it's dealing with the same things, dealing with Sierra Leone, dealing with the control over diamonds. And again, and more and more this story is now starting to become part of the diamond, of the story around diamonds.
Sierra Leone was in a state of civil war. During that time, 50% of the 4.5 million people of Sierra Leone were forced out of their homes. Thousands of people have been killed. Millions more have experienced atrocities you do not want to even think about.
The people of Sierra Leone insisted that they wanted a democratic government. They no longer wanted the military power. The military resisted.
Well, there are fights for power going on in Africa, and the opposition movements always call themselves revolutionary forces in one way or another.
The IUF is not a revolutionary movement. The IUF seeks political power.
And above all, we'll fight to the last man.
What's the war about? The rebels want to force themselves into power.
Rebel leaders want to buy weapons. In order to buy weapons, they need money. In order to get money, they need diamonds.
Trading diamonds has allowed rebel forces to buy fuel, to buy weapons, to buy friends.
So instead of fighting for democracy, many of these leaders are actually fighting over diamonds.
The rebels are angry at civilians for voting in a civilian government.
Soldiers would catch the people and say, oh, you voted, look at the finger, and if they see that indelible ink on the finger, they chop off your finger.
Chop, 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 knife, pull up.
And this is how this business of amputation started.
In Sierra Leone, it's quite clear that the tactics of the RUF were to target civilian population in order to spread terror.
It was like we experiencing hell on earth. The rebels started attacking innocent people.
People were hacked to death, houses set on fire, anybody who tried to get out of the house gunned down, people lined up at random and shot.
This is a war about diamonds. The bulk of them were young boys between the ages of 8 and 16. Some were carrying AK-47, some were carrying Russian assault rifles and rocket-propelled grenade launchers. I heard a loud blast. One leader fired a rocket-propelled grenade in one of the flats around and noticed the scattered remains of some 8 people. I saw 2 children whose heads were severed from the rest of their body, and a good number of people with their remains scattered all over. The world was upside down for us in Sierra Leone at that time.
This is a war about diamonds, a war about natural resources.
In chaos, there are people who can take advantage of the lack of government, of the lack of legal controls. There are utterly shameless individuals and organizations out there who will buy conflict diamonds even though they know that those diamonds are helping to sustain a war, even a war as brutal as the one in Sierra Leone.
The De Beers Company has been caught up in a big controversy. They claim not to be buying diamonds and gems from conflict zones like Sierra Leone. They have developed codes of conduct and other ethical standards because they've been criticized severely by NGO groups that have monitored their practices.
At some point in the chain, those diamonds do get down to consumers who, when they buy themselves an engagement ring, want to know that that jewel has not blighted somebody else's life.
I would appeal to you to find out where the diamond you buy is coming from. is the Gorilla News Network.
Diamonds, like anything, has a history. They come from particular places, and where they come from is part of the meaning of it. Unless, okay, I'll make sure we finish before 4:50, as I said, a couple of minutes. They become part of the history of it, unless you can stop people from knowing the story. That is, De Beers has been involved, it has to be involved in two battles, in two campaigns. On the one hand, here is what we say it means. It means love, it means whatever. And at the same time, you do not get to hear about where they come from. You do not get to hear about the history. You do not get to hear about the real meaning of diamonds. The real meaning of diamonds has to be kept out so that this fantasy can work. So the fantasy, once you put the two together, the fantasy can't work. Once you put the reality together, once the reality becomes part of the way in which we think about diamonds, the fantasy cannot work. And therefore, and advertisers know this, De Beers knows this, and you have to try incredibly hard to make sure that the real story does not get out. Okay, I'll carry this on at the next class, so I'll see you next Monday. Thank you.